Welcome, you guys, and welcome to Outpost Gray. I already see the room filling up. This is exciting. It is Thursday, and if this is your first time here, welcome to the Outpost Gray Show, a show that is in collaboration with Grant Thornton Public Sector, and I'm your host, Jack Scott, and we go live every Thursday from 3:30 to 4:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, where I have the opportunity to provide you information in technology, innovation, in cybersecurity. And I do that doing fireside chats, panels, one-on-one interviews, and like the series that we have today, which is going to be talking about the female voice of technology and innovation. But before we dive into that, really quick admin notes I want to share with you guys. I am actually going to be, I just locked my screen so I can't even see you all, but I'm going to be going on leave. Yep. Influencers do take leave. So I'm actually going to be going on leave starting after this live stream. So after today's live stream, you will not be seeing me live streaming on Thursdays until 21 July. So 21 July will be my first day back on that Thursday. I'll be going live. You can still follow me on TikTok and YouTube. I will be posting shorts there at Outpost Gray. Really easy to find me. Would love to engage with you over there. So please definitely go over there and follow me if you haven't already. I'm not like, usually I post whatever I post on TikTok to YouTube. So either one you follow, it'll still be fun. The reason I'm taking leave, just so you guys know, I actually got afforded an opportunity to go to a nonprofit that focuses on TBI treatment, so traumatic brain injury treatments. And because of my military deployments, I have had multiple TBIs, and it starts impacting individuals' memories, just quality of life. And it's something that I've actually personally struggled with for quite a few years. And now I'm finally starting to receive that treatment, which I've been in treatment since around 2019. So I've decided to take that time take the time off to really focus on me. But the TikToks and the videos that I'm going to be putting out are going to be around my treatment, because I want you guys to see that other authentic side of me, of what goes on behind the scenes. But really quick shout out to everybody in the chat right now. I already see Kimberly. Awesome. I love seeing you here. Cybersecurity Central. Carrie, always great to see you. Better be dropping those dad jokes. James, I just saw you this morning. If you guys don't know, James is actually many miles away. He's about 7 to 8 miles ahead of us, doing some pretty cool things over in another country. But I won't spill the beans, James, in case you don't want anybody to know where you're at. All right, so let's kick it off. Today, we are going to be doing our highlight series, the female voice of innovation and technology. And I'm really excited about the guest. Brigitta Rubin is actually somebody that I know through her husband. And as soon as I met her, I could feel her brilliance. We're going to be talking about some of the things that she's doing in the innovation space. She's a passionate scientist, an entrepreneur, and a science fiction writer. She is literally breaking the glass ceilings. I don't even think she knows what a glass ceiling is. So I'm really excited to have her on the show so she can share her background, how she got into this space, what innovation looks like to her, and so much more. So without further ado, let's go ahead and bring on our guest. Welcome. How are you?
I'm doing awesome. This is so amazing. I have never had this kind of opportunity. And so it is amazing to see how much time and how well you put this all together. I am truly honored. Thank you.
Absolutely. It is my pleasure. You have such a fascinating background. I'm excited for, your background has been very diversely different from other individuals that I've had on the show. So I'm really excited to be talking to somebody at your stature and just learning about your background. So before we kick it off, can you take the next few minutes and share your unique background and how you got to where you're at?
So I often tell people that I am a collector of people and ideas. I love to be engaged with different types of people and different types of ideas. And I was really given an opportunity back when I was actually starting into college at Sandia National Labs, because my parents didn't make very much money, and so I qualified for an internship. And I wanted to be a medical doctor. And I think from the minute he met me, my mentor, who became a mentor, Doug Loy, said, you know what? I cannot let you be a medical doctor. And he convinced me to become a chemist. And then the model in Sandia Labs is always you go and get your PhD and go and publish. And what I found was that I don't do well in a single space. I engage and sort of go wide and get a lot more. So what happened and what started was, and I did really well in chemistry, and I owe my career to my mentor, Doug Loy, who is now in Arizona teaching there. But it is all about the ability to sort of morph. And I think once I started to come out to DC and started to get out of my own comfort zone, I started to discover that there's a lot more out there and a lot more ways I could morph. And it's really uncomfortable. And one of the things I've learned a lot is that it's okay not to be the expert in the room. It's okay to be the learner in the room. And so that's what I would say. I'm a consummate learner. And that's why I really love sort of where my career has taken me, because I'm always learning something. And even if it's not to ever do that again. And that's always the joke of my resumes, right? It's just a list of things I never want to do again. So as I've morphed my career, I went from being a bench chemist in, I'll give you a long word, siloxane chemistry. It's polysiloxane chemistry. To I went to forensic chemistry in the DEA. From there, I went to DARPA, and I was working in consequence management and accelerated healing. And then I just kept morphing to weapons of mass destruction, countering those, and then analysts for the intel community and counterintelligence. And right now, I do a lot of what we call partnering with industry groups and trying to get all these different technologies that people create, all those scientists we had out there create, and it never makes it out into the field. And so the reason for that is many reasons, where you could say policy and process and people, but the biggest issue really is that we don't have a really good way to get it into a space where we can scale up. And so my deal is I work with industry partners directly, we work with mission partners directly, and really change that up. But that means I have to really get okay with learning, really being open to listening, and that's what I've gotten better at doing. And I joke with people that we like to hear ourselves talk, and that feels good. And then if you give the floor to somebody else for a while and really listen to them, though, you can get so much more from a room. Then when I went to grad school just a few years ago, I took a couple of classes in negotiation and influence, and what I learned was it wasn't just about learning, it's also about taking what you learned and sort of breaking it all to pieces and seeing what happens if I connect this to this and this to this. Mm-hmm. And there's a saying that I love, and some people I know get very nervous, namely lawyers, but there's a saying that is, you want to think like an engineer but steal like an artist. Mm-hmm. And so when we look around us and when we start to talk about what innovation is taking all that amazing stuff that's around us every single day and saying, what can we do with it now? And whether it is a business practice or the way you've been thinking about art or how you think about cybersecurity or the way you engineer the next, set of pharmaceutical tools. It's not just changing the ideas, it's also changing the people that are around you. Yeah. Because one of the biggest things we like to do is we go to the people we like. They're comfortable and they talk our talk, right? Yeah. And if you want to really change what you do and how things are done, and you want to be an entrepreneur, you want to be an innovator, you've got to surround yourself with very different minds and and diverse opinions. And lots of them will not be on your level, right, Jax? Yeah. And I joke, people will call me up like, Brigitta, I have this really cool idea in cybersecurity. And I'll say, you have the wrong Rubin. Because my husband's a cybersecurity professor, right? And they'll go, no, we want to do this. And they know that Scott knows how to get this done with these things. But if they want to break things, they talk to Brigitta, because Brigitta will show you how to do it in different ways. So we have our own skills. Scott will tell you how to do it in the right way, then Brigitte
Yeah.
will say like, let's combine and see what happens. So I think when each of us thinks about our career, I sort of maybe, I don't know, probably about 10 years ago, about halfway through, I started to learn that I liked having autonomy in my career. The company I work for right now gives you that. You get a lot of ability to sort of, to an extent, choose what projects you're going to work on, and you can sort of drive that. But also, I like to sort of build the projects I want to work on. And what I found was, if I found something that I could make it interesting, I could also convince everybody else that I had the coolest thing they wanted to work on. So it's not enough that you are good at finding what you want to do. You got to surround yourself, and so you got to convince other people why they want to be there with you too.
Influence is big. So there was a couple of things that you talked about, and I want to touch on a couple of them. First off, being in a room with individuals that it's not so much like-minded individuals, but individuals that think differently, but along the same lines of innovation and entrepreneurship, like you were saying. But you still have to have. I think that we have to be really careful of not getting confused with like-minded with people that we like.
Right.
And then they don't challenge us. And so you're really good at doing that. I have slowly started, because it's a tough thing to change your circle. It takes time and it takes intention. Like, you have to be intentional about, okay, this is the circle I have now. How do I get there? Was there ever a point in your career where you didn't have those different minds and opinions, and you intentionally went out and sought them and created the circle that you have today?
It's funny because I actually found it was actually the opposite way. I had unknowingly gotten a very diverse group, and then I stopped that role where I was in charge of a science board. I had to bring in people from like McDonald's and music and everything else, right? And I started looking around, and I saw that my group around me all looked like me and were all the same. And I was like, oh my God, this is so bad for my career. And that's actually when I shifted and went to grad school.
Yeah.
And if you want to have your life turned upside down, go from being in the intelligence community or the DoD in Washington, D.C., where everybody's known everybody's last 30 years and 15 years, to grad school where we don't even speak the same language. I met people from China and Kazakhstan and everything in the world, and let alone the same, zone of thinking, right? So I had to be very intentional, number one. Number two, the other way I had to do it more locally was I got in with a couple of meetups because I do science fiction writing, and you find people there that everybody wants to do science fiction writing, but it's very, very different. And the way they do it is different. The way they approach things are different. So you do have to be intentional, and you have to foster those relationships.
Yeah, and I see that with a lot of individuals that are in the innovation space that are breaking barriers. They are surrounded by like-minded individuals that are doing the same things, but they have differing opinions. And that was something else you said that I think is important. You can have individuals in your circle that you respect, but maybe you don't always agree with. But I think that is important because they're going to push you to think outside of your box and think of things differently. As long as we can approach it with a mind of just being open to new ideas. And do you see that in the world of innovation where you're at is you're going to get these really diverse, sharp thinking individuals, and really you just need to be open to ideas instead of judging the ideas.
Right. And helping them to get to where they want to be. I've never met anybody in a room that goes, you know what I want to do? I want to make sure we don't, we fail in a fantastic way, right? And we're going to fail in some way. But everybody wants to move things forward. A lot of times, though, they're scared. They're scared that the policy is going to come back on them. They're scared that, in some cases that they could, put people in danger, right? And so figuring out how to get there without, and uncovering that, because people won't tell you that.
Yeah.
And I got to give kudos on like sharing your TikTok experiences with going through your TBI thing, because that opens it up and says, I also struggle with this. And I have another group called Space to Fail, and I had Andrew Simpson on there. And one of the themes for that month was foot and mouth failures. And I'm like the queen of foot and mouth failures. And so I wrote up sort of a funny, jargon to introduce it. And Andrew Simpson's whole discussion was his failure in Iraq when he and his group got hit by an IED, and how when they were all being triaged, the first thing out of his mouth was, "Yeah, I'm okay." And he said, "I kept saying, yeah, I'm okay. Yeah, I'm okay. Yeah, I'm okay." He goes, "Until I wasn't, until I could no longer function."
Yeah.
And so understanding that, he goes, and the reason why is because I always wanted to be a soldier. I always wanted to be, and I was so afraid that if I admitted I wasn't okay, they would push me out of the army.
Yeah, you're lesser than. And that's really cultural too in the military, is like they talk down to you, they mistreat you if you do what we call sick call and go, and if you have an injury, it's like tough it out. And we always say, we have a saying in the military, when you're not feeling good, change your socks and drink water. And that's what they do on road marches. Yeah, change your socks, drink water, eat an ibuprofen, and everything will be okay until it, like you said, until it's not. I want to go back to innovation before we pivot into the space to fail, because I really want to talk about what you do there. But innovation, this is a buzzword. I was just at RSA, and it was a word that was being used there. But what does innovation really mean from your lens?
Yeah, and this is it's really interesting for me. I was really fortunate. For once in my life, I had good timing as opposed to the usual horrible timing I have. One of the things I wanted to do if I was going to go back to school was not get a degree that was the same thing over and over again. And there was a program that I liked at Carnegie Mellon that took business, design, and engineering and pulled them together. I was like, that's really cool, but it was in Pennsylvania. I couldn't go there. And then a few years ago, Penn State opened up one called Corporate Engineering, Entrepreneurship and Innovation. And I was like, that sounds really cool. And they merged the business school with the engineering school and brought this together. And I thought that's a really interesting opportunity. And so I started there. And what I started to find was they started to teach you like the standard, like you do blue sky models, and then you like have everybody throw stuff to, and I learned a lot about like the processes that are innovation, right? You need those. Important to give you that. And then when you start to, but I've been in innovation. I've been doing technology transition at DARPA. I've been doing all the really cool stuff, for years. And I was like, yeah, we did that. We did that. We did that. And you know what? It all ended just like the last scene from Raiders of the Lost Ark, where we're all packaging up the Ark and rolling it into the warehouse. And I thought, there's got to be more to it than this. And so what I started to see was, especially when I ended up getting my first concentration was in engineering leadership. My second concentration was in influence and negotiation. And that's where you really started to break out and started to think about things and innovation differently in how you approach people and problems and process and all the other things that are going on that undermine you. And so for me, innovation right now is not just that I create a really cool new way to coat ships so they don't get barnacles on them, which was actually a program we had in Sandia. It's a way of how I think differently about working together with other people. It's how I think differently about how I approach a problem. It's how I change up the way that we are approaching something. And what's funny about it is you will hear people like Karma Medina, who talks about rebel leadership, and others. And what you'll find is these people also often, these people that break things and sort of move things and morph things, they're not called innovators. They're called pain in the asses. And so
funny.
It's and that's what I sort of became known for. But you break things a lot. Oh, well, I didn't have to. It was already broken. All I did was just sort of show it to you. My answer is I'm not interested in repeating bad history so innovation for me is about adapting and constantly adopting and changing up things, because we are in a global space now where it used to be technology changed every 18 months. We had to sort of deal with that then. Now we have stuff changing almost monthly. And I think all of us went through the pandemic, coming out on the other side going, if I see one more Zoom session, I'm going to probably hurl myself off a building. But that's become a norm, right? Or I joke like how many different platforms you have to know. You have to know Citrix and Zoom and Teams, all of them. And so we have to almost be innovative in how we do it, because we have to adopt these and make it better for us. Because what happens when we don't make it better for us, we sort of shrivel up and die.
Yeah.
and that means our careers die too.
Yeah.
And so I think if you think about innovation in a way of I'm adopting and adapting and revolutionizing not just me, but my career. And now I can also, that's the greatest thing about right now. You can do a lot more than we ever did. You can now do PCR in your house in Africa using a PCR that you made from the DIY guys in the DIY bio group. You can share your data with others, and you can make changes across the scientific community when you couldn't do that 10 years ago unless you have a PhD at a high-end school. So the idea that we have to have things, we have to have the perfect thing to be an innovator or an entrepreneur is no longer true. You do have to be open, though, to not getting it right the first or the second or 500th time. For me, you have to be okay with it not being perfect. And this is a really big struggle. And you also have to reach out and surround yourself with people who are going to help you move your stuff forward, or be honest and tell you, Brigitta, that's a really cool idea. If you're only going to, target people that are going, the 5 people in the world that need this. So, if we think about innovation in a way that we're open to change, it's not scary. But the truth is, a lot of innovation is moving things away from what we're used to.
Absolutely. And people, why do people not like change? You've had to have thought about this, being in the innovation space and the changes that you're seeing and having to use your influence to get people to get on board to buy your products or buy what you're trying. And we're going to talk about the merges material science and adaptive insights and composable capabilities on demand that you've created. But why are people so reluctant to have change?
Oh, it's worked for me for 10 years. Why should I change it? I might get fired. I might lose my job. Somebody might not like me. We catastrophize a lot, I think. The other thing that I found is that a lot of times the other groups around us will make sort of the little, mountain molehill issue with the downstream effects of this. And I think one of the things that I get frustrated with in the systems I'm in right now is, sorry, my cats opened the door. Very innovative. But we get surrounded by the bureaucrats that are around us that sort of push down, say, no, that's not going to happen. No, you can't do that. No. And so we get sort of moved away. We're not incentivized to do it. Mm-hmm. I was telling somebody that I was explaining to my industry partner how the government measures return on investment in their research spaces. And we only have one measurement. It's, did you spend your budget?
Yep.
And they looked at me like I had grown a third head. Not 2 was not enough. Like, are you insane? I said, that's our ROI. And so when we merge these 2 organizations, yes, that's very true, James. And we take people out of their comfort zones on both sides. Mm-hmm. It's been the last year and a half I've been on this program, it's been very, very interesting to me because I have to explain to both sides how, no, we're not going to take 6 months to build a requirements document because these guys are only paid for what they bring in every quarter, and they're not going to play with us if we're slow.
Yeah.
And on the government, on the contract, on the industry side, no, we're not going to just bring the stuff you guys have already done for the last 10 years because we want to push this forward. And we're okay with the bigger bill.
Yeah.
So it's changing the way that we've always worked. It's being open to more failures and more feet. And I think that's the biggest thing that I have right now with my current client is he is open to that. He is the exact person we need to do this because he'll say to them, you know what? Somebody created this new thing in one of our labs. We want to see if we can scale it. So let's put it into this and see what happens. And they'll be like, well, what if it doesn't work? He goes, well, then we don't do it again next quarter. I mean, it's not that big of a deal. But that is very uncomfortable. And the thing that a lot of people say is, we get mad at government for spending large amounts of money, but government says, well, we put this plan in place for the next 10 years, and we know the money and everything else to be put, and if we adjust it, it'll have all these downstream effects. And so some of this is that we put ourselves into these very, very stringent models of how we do business that we are the dinosaurs in the age of mammals. And that hurt us throughout the war, and it's hurting us more now.
Yeah, we're not learning by our history, and it's kind of frustrating in that space.
Right.
I'm so fascinated by this talk. I keep forgetting to bring the screens in and out. So I want to do a little bit of a pivot, and I want to talk about your engineering startup, because this is how Scott introduced me to you, and he shared with me what you were doing. You were in a competition at that time, but yeah, everybody check this out. Please share like what you guys had created for this engineering startup and why.
So the National Security Innovation Network they go across and they look at all these labs that they've created. This amazing stuff that comes out of Sandia or Army Research Lab or whatever. It says, if we can take some of these and take some innovators together and teach them in sort of a crash course in MBA school for 12 weeks of how to create a product, can we create startups that will move this forward? And ironically, this is very bad timing because my CTO just quit. But what we did, I got together with one of the co-founders of this technology, Kevin, and then a NASA scientist, Ed, and then myself, who I actually have a background in material science, just not in this particular type of science. And we chose this particular technology that had come out of the Army Research Lab under Eric Wetzel. And we created a business plan around it. We created, with the help of the National Security Innovation Network, we started figuring out how we would sort of baby step through it and then how we'd move forward. And this is where there was some disconnect between myself and the CTO, because, and probably even the COO, which was, I said we should be moving beyond customized plastics and 3D filament, and we should take this model to the next generation where we are having a longer range appreciation for what materials we can bring in, a faster way to roll AI into it, and to really do what they want to do for Industry 4.0, which is understanding exactly what's going on in your environment. Say you're in the desert, how it's going to affect your filament, and then being able to dial in those differences to how you create your filament so you can replace that particular jack for your car or your broken item, because this was made for army guys in the front field, versus the guy who is down in South America where there's very high humidity, very high levels of water and everything else, and how that same approach is not going to work for them. So understanding not only how we are creating very, very tailored materials, but how we also tailor it to the environment you're going to be in at that time on that day. So what we want to do is we're going to change the way that we work. We have to change the way that we look at data. That means data coming out of our different 3D printers. And that also means that we are starting to change our biggest issue, supply chain right now. Because one of the biggest things we found over the last year was supply chain is just a disaster, especially all petroleum-based things. And so we've been on hold for months because we couldn't get the right type of ABS in. So this was where it came. And what's interesting is you can have the best ideas in the world, but if you don't have a cohesive team on the same level, it's going to break. And it was sort of interesting because one would say, well, I want to do this. And I said, we're not going to. So we sort of split up and we went to two different directions, and I'm moving more with the Army in forward-leaning areas instead. He's going to go into his area, and that's fine. But it's understanding where and how you're taking the technology and the on-ramps to get there.
Yeah.
So that's sort of, and one of the biggest factors of a successful startup is its startup, is the C team, right, the beginning team. So I think that's the if anybody has something they want to really explore, or they want to be part of one of these teams, the National Ensign is a great team to be part of. I can put you in touch with them, or you can just go to their website. They're really helpful. They've got great mentors in there, and it was really, really good. It It was like going back to grad school for 12 months or 12 weeks, but it's like Y Combinator. You're getting thrown into what's required, how you have to change the way you think, how you're looking at and structuring your money and your people and everything else, and how you're going to break in. And one of the things that we were sort of moving around was the DIY and maker spaces. But then the Army connected with us and said, hey, we want to try this for this other technology. And one of the people just was not comfortable with it. So so you have to realize that every single part of this, now that you've got more money or more power, but you've got no money for it. So how you model that is also going to be a big factor. And who you get involved, how you manage the IP factors of it, where you're going to go forward with these different, and how do you sell your ideas. There's lots of people who will give you money for your ideas. But what you don't want to do is not own that after they're done putting that money in. So
what was the organization again that you went through to be able to identify this technology?
Ensign, National Security Innovation Network. I think they have a new name. It's called a Forge or something like that. But you can still see they're still branded under the NSIN, and they go to all the different national labs and Navy labs, Army labs, all the different federal labs, and they say, "Let's take this." Yeah, that's exactly it. Ensign. And they get people from startups. It's not just somebody from the lab telling you what to do. It's a lot of really good entrepreneurs in there, people who have a mind for business that are looking to help you. And what they first do is they introduce you to some potentials that they think are good. And then, but if you have one that you think should be thrown out there as a potential, that's really good too.
Yeah, I think this is really great. This is our mission right here. We believe in building sustainable conditions that make the world a safer place. So this is really awesome. So this is something like I or anybody watching this can get involved in if they want to, right? You don't have to have a certain amount of money or have a certain position within an organization. Great.
And I did have to compete for it. I had to interview and stuff like that to be on their teams, their combination teams.
Yeah.
And then
you need to have a background within something that's similar to what they're looking for.
And they have a lot.
Okay,
They had cyber. I had a lady that I met with was AT&T. They had bio. They had dentistry. They had entrepreneurs are in there. I think the only thing you have to know, it's like another, I'd say, part-time job. At least it's at least 20 hours a week where you're going to be. They give you
assignments, right? Yeah. You're not getting paid.
It's totally free. Right.
Yeah, it's a volunteer, but you're growing your network and you're growing your skill set, and
theoretically you're learning how to build a startup.
This is amazing. So when you started this, did you already have your team in place, your partners and everything? So you met them through NSIN.
Right.
That's amazing.
And they put us together and they said, okay, this is going to be the team for this. And then you decide on a name for your group and how you're going to do it, what's going to be your thing. And there's a couple different things were good and bad in the way we were put together. The CTO was also a co-founder of the technology. Now, it's hard to have your baby told that's not perfect.
Yeah.
So he had his own background on how he wanted it to move and go, right? So that can be good and bad. But he also understood all the sort of like all the skeletons that were in the closet of, beyond what had already been done, who they already talked to in terms of industry partners and stuff like that, or how things what wasn't published. So that was good. But in terms of how you can I like to just sort of take things apart and look at things differently, people get very uncomfortable with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, let's do a little bit of a pivot. I want to talk about another initiative you're doing, because you've got a lot of things that you've got going on your plate. And one of the things is called the Space to Fail. And it is, you hold it I think it's bi-weekly now. You used to do it every week.
No, it's every month. It's just once
every month. Okay. Yep, it's every month. But yeah, share a little bit about what is Space to Fail and why did you start it?
So it was after you get done with grad school, everybody has this like imaginary view that like magic happens and now you live at your career, right? For some
I
reason.
don't know. I haven't graduated yet, but I can see that happening in the spring of next year.
It was sort of interesting. I think the most interesting thing I saw was how many medical doctors were in the program.
Wow.
I was like, you already went to school for like a zillion years. What are you doing? So I got done, and I said I want to pivot my career to more innovation, and I don't want it to be just about every other innovation buzzword, because I can hit all of them. I hit on them before. I want to create something that's truly unique, that brings out different types of brand. And so so I was looking around, and I started to do what you're supposed to do in grad school, which is sort of look at what's already out there. So I looked at meetup groups that were out there, different types of professional groups that are out there. And there was a lot out there that was also looking at failure and importance of failure. And a lot of them was like, they had F Up Nights, which is a global group that does storytelling about it, and then professional failure. And then there was different groups around sort of, learning, to speak, to do better pitches or whatever. And I said, I want to concentrate on professional failure and the importance of it, but I want to take it and have not just sort of a venting session. I want to have a group of people that come together and say, this is the indicators I missed or I got. This is, different types of ways that I've had that problem too, and I had a solution for it. Or, what, this was a moment in that, it was like that one meme. Being an adult is like looking both ways when you cross the street and then getting hit by a meteor. You just, there was one guy, my first person I had on there was trying to create the first-person shooter game in 1996. He had got the rights from Michael Crichton's books. Everything was awesome. Everything was going perfect. And Michael Crichton had this one little text in there that said he maintained creative control. But, if you've read any of Crichton's books, you sort of know that Michael Crichton, first-person shooter games, looks pretty good. There's no blood in Jurassic Park. Between the time the contract was signed and they went to go start, somebody decided to kidnap Crichton and his child by gunpoint and just basically terrorize them. And so by the time they start that, Michael Crichton is now very anti-gun. And so guess how that contract went?
Wow.
You can't do anything about that. He goes, but these are the things you start to realize that no matter how much you think you planned right, some things just, and so the other thing we said was, well, how could you have, sort of made changes or adjusted to things, and they just weren't able to do it. Everything sort of went to hell. But it's those types of opportunities, and you learn this from CEOs. And then the biggest things I've found is that you hear people talk about big names, and they're like, yeah, that was 1996, and guess what? It's 2022 or 2021, and I'm still going strong. So you can see that it didn't become a career ender. But also, we start to sort of break out of what really is holding us back, but also ways that we hadn't considered salvaging things. Because I think there's a lot of times we think like, oh my God, this is over. And what you see more often, which is unfortunate, is people just running for the exits. And a lot of times there's a lot to be taken from something that doesn't work as a whole, but maybe works really well in components.
Yeah. So let's talk about I want to go back to talking about when failure happens and that feeling of like our entire lives are ending right now. And, our career has ended, because you hear that. You'll hear, oh man, that was a career ending move that individual made. I don't agree with that. I think that there are big hits that can affect you, and they can affect you long term. But I think that eventually in time, people forget. It might be laden in history and they can find the data, but depending on what you've done, unless it is like a sexual assault on something or a criminal activity that you've done.
Turns out that even that won't get you. I've been listening to a lot to the mafia guys, and they're like, yeah, I turned state's evidence in the 30 murders I did, not so bad, and now
there they are,
making money. They now advise mob movies.
Wow. See, and that's a great case in point. So it's like, for anybody that's listening to this now, that's like afraid to fail, or maybe you have failed and you're like, now I feel like it's a career ending move that I did. I don't agree with that. It might take time for you to pivot and reinvent yourself and gain that trust from people, because that's the big thing, is gaining that trust and that influence again.
Yes.
But I think you can do it no matter what you've done. And you just brought up a great point, because I didn't know that That's amazing. But so you yourself, you have accomplished large feats in your life. And when you do that, me being a business owner, I know I've had a lot of failures, financial failures, just overall mistakes with maybe how I've managed my employees or the lack of managing them appropriately. What tips and tricks can you provide on what you do when you come head to head with a failure? Because you probably sometimes recognize that there's a likelihood to fail when you're going after something just because of the space that you've been in for so long.
Yeah, it's funny. I'm actually getting better at it. I am not, although I have lots of energy and stuff. I'm not very good at telling people like this is the end and we're done. I try to give people as many opportunities. I try to figure things out.
Yeah.
But when things are bad, they're just bad, and I put them off for too long. I had that this week. Somebody didn't bother to tell me that they were unhappy with me. I went to go sign into a meeting, and then I was denied access. I was like, well, that's weird. It must have been my team sign on. So I tried again, and I was denied again. And it happened a third time. And I was like, what the heck is going on? And so I contacted somebody on the next day, and they're like, yeah, they don't want you in that meeting anymore. And I said,
Wow.
Okay, could they have bothered to tell me? Yeah, well, they're not happy with what you're doing. I was like, well, this is the first time I've heard of this because I put my stuff in and nothing comes out. So I think a lot of us tend to do that. I think a lot of times we wait and we get the passive aggressive.
Yeah.
This isn't working for us. And so I'm not sure what the answer is, but I know one size doesn't fit all, number one. And number two, like you said, with the trust, the person came back to me that told me that, like, yeah, they're not interested, but I still want you on the team. And now I'm up to, this is a very lucrative, contract, and it has a lot of influence and a lot of possibility to it. But what happened was I went in thinking I would do one thing and told I was going to do one thing, and then they switched me over to something over here. So it was hard for me to figure out my way back. But there's stuff that's incumbent upon us. We can't just expect somebody to get it right.
Mm-hmm.
We've got to do a better job communicating that, number one. And number two, when things aren't working, is it a mismatch of skills that we chose to take over? Or is it something that we are filling the hole even though it's not, even with the wrong one, because we're so desperate for something? And I think the latter was with me. They're like, we're not getting anything else, so Brigitta's a body, we'll just stick her over here. That happens a lot in the contracting world. And if you're the contractor and you know that's happening and it's not working for you, you are hurting yourself, because you're not going to do the best you can unless you want to learn it and do it. And in some cases, they're actually not, they're taking you from here and they're putting you in like an admin position of, I don't know, dental floss, right? And it's not good for you to do that. You're going to die. And people go, well, but it's pain. We have golden handcuffs. I have a friend in Qualcomm and another one at a very large pharmaceutical company. Like, I'm being paid a lot of money. If I leave here, then I won't be paid as much. I was like, you hate your job and you don't want to be there. I mean, you can find another job. You won't make as much, but you won't live in San Francisco either, so you won't have to pay as much. So I think the first thing we have to do is be honest with what's going on. Do we really need that? I mean, I don't say we need that person, but, is that person's skills what we need? Can we afford them? And do we, I am not a big person on presenteeism. And there's a lot of reasons for that. We can discuss it later, but I'm not. I like to see just what you can produce for me. And if you can produce what I need in 5 hours, that's awesome. If it takes you 50 hours, okay. But let's just get a fee on figuring out what that looks like. I'd rather do that for a fixed price. And that's just my opinion. Not everybody has that idea. But what we have right now is we have a lot of models that we do, especially the government, that your butt in your chair is how we establish value. And so it's hard to figure out how we establish value, especially when we have people that break molds. And you're going to get that a lot with sort of like the new gig economy too. And one of the things that I'm looking for now is I needed to get somebody to make a website for me, and then I sort of need an assistant. I've got to lay down what I want in that assistant. And I think that's where you first start to get wrong, is you don't lay out and sit down and go, what do I need them to do on a daily basis? How long do I need to be there? And, what does this really look like? And it's difficult to establish that, because that takes time too. And guess what? I don't have any of.
Yeah. Executives don't have time. That's the one thing. Yeah, that's very minimum in that space. Okay, so I definitely want to hit on a couple more things before we wrap up. And then one of the things that I want to talk about is you being a science fiction writer. I always find that really interesting. And you're not the first woman innovator at your level that is a writer. And so I always find this really interesting. I never asked the other woman this. She was also a scientist, why she became a science fiction writer. But where did your passion come from to become specifically a science fiction writer?
It was ironic. When I was in school, I was one of those people that I think I graduated my bachelor's degree with 186 credits, because
oh my gosh,
I had a lot of stuff I liked.
That's like 3 degrees. I can't.
No, I did double major, but it was. But one of the things I did to relax was I took a creative writing class every Saturday for like 5 semesters. And one of the things I learned from that was both the ability to roll out some creative stuff that I learned, but also how to give and how to receive criticism. And so it was a really good skill for me to learn. But what I see around me and the people and the ideas that I see around me are just so amazing. And so I want to get those stories out. I find it really cathartic, very interesting. I joke that everybody I meet is going to have some level of activity in my book. And usually you pull different things together and you make them a character. It's not just one character. But it's always, it's fun storytelling. It makes me a better, helps me communicate better with people when I'm trying to explain very difficult ideas.
100%.
It also makes me a better observer of people and things around me. I joke that I have a whole file of pictures on my phone that's all like has nothing in common. I was like, no, that's like the perfect zombie survival house. That's and then I saw this one lady and she was just amazing red hair, and I was like, she's gonna be a person. Then I was at Home Depot and I was like, that's gonna be another person too. So it's a way for me to be creative, I think, one, but it also, even if my stuff never gets published, it's the process of learning how to write your stuff, how to also, writing actually has changed a lot. It's very interesting. I was sort of in love, you sort of get in love with your writing, right, or anything. And I was had this really wonderful intro, a la sort of Anne Rice, intro interview with a vampire, and they were going through it, flip. And this one New York Times winning author looks at it, she goes, "Yeah, that's boring." And I was like, "Oh my god!" And because I spent so much time on it, she said, "No, the new information we receive here is that if you don't grab somebody's attention in the first page, Amazon's shown that you won't get anybody going in the second and third. So you have to pull that out." So writing is a catharsis. And I have a joke that I had this horrible VP I used to work under a few years ago, and that person has a horrible death in one of my books where she gets basically skinned alive by monkeys because I hate her. And so so that's, and then there's the amazing people, right? The people that in one case, like one story I have is my sister takes a large part of it. My sister passed away from epilepsy a few years ago. She was 24 from what's called SUDEP, sudden unexpected death by epilepsy. And so it's sort of my homage to her, and how her epilepsy, in my case, would be a superpower. It protects her. So yeah, there's a lot of opportunities for it. But in some cases, it's just the emotional side of art.
Yeah, I just dropped your link in the chat for anybody who wants to pick it up. Everybody, I just picked up The Outsider, so I will read that. I always grab the Kindle version, but I need to, next time I see you, when I see you, because we've never met each other in person, but I'm going to get a hard copy and come and see you.
I have some, so I will be happy to sign it for you and send it on.
That would be awesome. And then I'll bring my book, my cybersecurity book. There you go.
Excellent.
Boom. Yeah, I love it. Yeah, this is great. I already bought it. So you guys definitely go check out her writing. I do have a question, and I don't know if you know this author, probably do, but Requiem, who besides the amazing Critchen are your favorite writers? Are you familiar with Anna Leckie?
I'm not. Is she the one that's the chemist? Somebody told me to read her stuff too. Some of my favorite are Preston, Carver Event, right, and Reliquary. Preston and Childs. I haven't read. Actually, lately it's Malcolm Gladwell for some reason.
Yeah,
but
I haven't read
there's
any of his in a while.
yeah, and I think a lot of the stuff lately I've been listening to a lot more podcasts. But when I like Childs and Douglas and Preston. For a long time, I would read the guy who wrote Twilight Eyes, Coons, and other ones. But some people become very formulaic, and I found him and a few others became formulaic, and so I sort of moved away from some of the fiction writing and moved into nonfiction a lot more. What I've been doing lately with a couple of co-writers is some team writing, which is actually how the best writing goes in Hollywood. And it's very, very, it gives your writing more depth, especially when you're trying to write backstory for people. So always be open to teaming with people. It's hard, but it's really helpful. So yeah.
I definitely want to get more engaged into writing fictional, non-fictional stuff. So Requiem's doing a follow-up to what you asked. He said he doesn't remember, but she got the Sci-fi Award trifecta with Ancillary Justice.
I'll check her. I'm writing it down. I have met John Scalzi. I know him pretty well. He is another well-known sci-fi writer, and we actually have him do some work for us when we're trying to develop interesting case studies. So I'd say what writing does and what science fiction writing does, sometimes different types of writing does, it actually helps you imagine better for your mission partners. I do a lot of developing use cases, especially futuristic ones, for my mission partners.
Yeah, I actually read that somewhere, and then I started reading sci-fi books. And I'm reading some right now that I'm into that are just because I need to get my right side of my brain going. So I've been playing the piano. I've been reading like more non-business books at night. It's still hard. It's like getting that triggering going. Okay, so we are going to wrap up. But before we do that, I'd like to give you a couple minutes to do some just final thoughts with the viewers before I send you over to the green room.
Okay. So one, thank you very much, and I know everybody's got a very short period of time for sitting in on things like this, and I appreciate your time. The other thing is, please feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn or wherever. I'm one of those people that I try to make time for people, and I try to get to know people more. I'm also starting another effort called Ready Player X, RPX, around teaming and doing pop-up teams around problem solving. So I'm, sort of developing that idea as well with a couple of other people in industry that I know. So one of the things that I want to do is, use platforms like Jaxis to get to know more people, to have more of a difference, and to get more people comfortable with making other people uncomfortable, but also making a dent in the universe. So if you'd like to, reach out and let's make a dent in the universe together.
I love that. And then ask her, I just dropped your LinkedIn into the chat. So everybody reach out to her, connect with her, and then ask her about space, the number 2, fail, space to fail. Definitely. This has been amazing, Brigitta. I'm so happy that you came on the show. And I'm going to send you to the green room. If I see you back there, we'll do our post-show banter.
Okay.
All right, girl.
Good. All right, thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. That was amazing. Make sure that you go. I've already said it, but I'm saying it again. Definitely go and follow her. Grab her book on Amazon. I just grabbed the Kindle version. I'll be reading through that one, The Outsiders. I also dropped that link in there. You guys were great. For all of my return offenders, I love seeing you guys in the chat. This has been awesome. If you're new here, welcome to the show. If you liked what you heard, make sure to like this video, share it out, and go ahead and hit that subscribe. That would be amazing. Also, after this show, we have Simply Cyber. So we're going to be rolling into that with Gerald Ozier. When you hop in over there, make sure to throw in hashtag Outpost Gray for me. And then last thing, if you weren't part of the first part of the stream, I did do a public service announcement just to let you all know that I'm going to be going on leave. And what that means is I'm just not going to be doing these live streams on Thursday from starting next week until the 21st. The 21st will be my first day back. I will be going live on TikTok and YouTube, not really live, but posting those short video clips. And the reason I'm taking this time off is really to focus in on me and to regroup. And I also was afforded an opportunity to go to a nonprofit that focuses on helping military soldiers and other individuals that have been impacted by TBI, terminal brain injuries, or traumatic brain injuries. So I'm going to be healing. And through that time, it's about a 3-week clinic process. I'm just going to be taking the time off to really regroup, but I'm going to be sharing my journey on TikTok and on YouTube. So go find me at Outpost Gray. And again, you guys are the reason that I'm here. I am so thankful. It's always great to see you guys every week. I'm going to miss you. So make sure to message me on TikTok and YouTube. But until then, I will see you guys soon. See you over at Simply Cyber. Bye.